the legend of the Sky Maiden. Obviously a fable, not a true story, that of the tribespeople who were really wondering why their cattle weren't producing as much milk. One tribesman decided he was going to get to the bottom of the mystery. He stayed up all night spying on the cows. What he saw that night, he could hardly believe. The most beautiful woman he had ever seen in his life descended on a moon. She carried with her empty pails and then proceeded to milk the cows. The next night he determined to catch her. He had her trapped. As he was approaching her, he said to her, or she said to him, "Please, do me no harm. Understand, I take the milk of your cows to my people. There is a great famine in our land, and it's only the milk of your cows that keeps them alive. Do not hurt them." To which the man responded, "I will not hurt you under one condition. You will be my wife." Which is kind of an interesting way to propose, right? She said, "I will be your wife under one condition, that you give me 3 days to return to my people to say farewell." Very well. True to her word, 3 days later she returned with one more condition. "I promise to marry you so long as you will never look inside this box." She brought with her this box. Well, that seemed like an easy enough promise to keep. And so he said, very well. They got married, but they did not live happily ever after, only happily to the day when curiosity overwhelmed him and he just had to know what is inside that box. She was out running errands and he couldn't help it, and he just had to know. And so he peeked inside the box, could not believe what he saw. When she returned, immediately she knew what had happened. She knew something was different. I don't know how all women seem to have this intuition, but they do. And she said, "You looked inside the box, didn't you?" Well, he couldn't deny it, yes, but they argued back and forth. Finally, feeling a bit defensive, he said, "I don't know what the big deal is. Maybe you haven't even looked inside the box recently, but did you even know?" "Yes, I looked inside the box, but it's empty. There's nothing in the box." To which she said, "I must leave you." "But why?" he asked incredulously. "Why would you leave me for looking inside of an empty box?" "Well, I'm not leaving you because you looked inside the box. I'm leaving you because you looked inside the box and you thought that it was empty." "Oh, it's not empty. It contains what I value most in life. It's filled with the smells, the memories, the sounds of my people, my homeland. How can I be married to a man who sees what I treasure most in life as emptiness?" With that, she left him, never to return. Such is the legend of the Sky Maiden. His own conclusion, I just want to reiterate one more time what I would put in that box, what I think is the most important thing. And for me, it is my faith. It is my religion. Now, many people scoff at that. They look inside my box and they see it as emptiness, fables, useless. But often people think of faith in terms of behaviors and beliefs, right? I mean, you just look at dictionary.com. It defines religion as, quote, "a specific fundamental set of beliefs and practices generally agreed upon by a number of persons or sects." What is faith? Beliefs. You believe a certain way. Practices, behaviors. I saw this at the General Conference session some years ago now in Atlanta. midweek, I decided that I wanted to get a little closer to the action, and so I found a hotel room right near the auditorium where we were meeting. And so I checked in Wednesday night, and I said to the woman, "All right, so are you guys busy this week?" She said, "Oh, yeah, we're overwhelmed. There's some big conference, Latter Day of Adventists or something going on over there, and all of those people are here this week." I said, "Oh, interesting. Well, tell me more about them." And she said, "Well, here." And with that, she handed me a copy of The Great Controversy and said, "Here, this is what they believe." I said, "Oh, okay, well, thank you." And she said, "Yeah, I think I've gotten about 30 of them. Everybody just keeps giving me a copy of this book, and I'm never going to read it. So I don't want it, but here, if you want to know more about them, read this book." She said, "Now, one thing I like about this church group that's here is that we never have to refill the coffee urn. Apparently, that's against their religion. They don't drink coffee." And so she said, "That's kind of nice." See, if you talk to her about Seventh-day Adventists, she will frame it in language of beliefs. Here, read The Great Controversy, this is what they believe. Or behaviors. They don't drink coffee. A lot of times we think about faith in terms of what we believe the seventh day is the Sabbath, and how we behave. We worship on the Sabbath. We don't eat certain unclean meats, and that's faith. Now, it dates way back when I was in the seminary. I remember a sermon that Dwight Nelson preached where he pointed out that really the essence of faith, if you look at the story of the prodigal son, the essence of faith is not about believing or behaving. Even the devils believe. It's not about behaving in certain ways. The essence of faith is about being with God. Think about the story of the prodigal son. See, both of them had a paradigm of what constitutes sin, namely bad behavior. Right? So just for fun, raise your hand if you think it is a sin to, and I've got a list here. Is it a sin to eat a chocolate chip cookie? To eat 100 chocolate chip cookies in one setting? All right, we're getting a few takers, okay? Is it a sin to listen to hip-hop music? All right? Is it a sin to text in church? Is it a sin to kill your neighbor? Okay, now we're getting, is it a sin to kill your neighbor's cat? A few? Okay, well, what is sin? See, both of the sons, in the story of the prodigal son, define sin in terms of bad behaviors. You remember the rehearsed speech of the prodigal son. When he comes home to the father, he says, "I have sinned." He just puts it right out there. "I have sinned." Well, how had he sinned? Well, he had engaged in bad behaviors. He had squandered his dad's inheritance. He had gone to parties and whatever he did. And the same with the elder brother. He has the same understanding of what is sin. Sin is a bad behavior. How can you take that kid back into the home after he has slept with prostitutes? It's the elder brother that brings out that little salacious detail in the story. Jesus never mentions it before. We don't know that that's what the prodigal son did. But see, he says, he has sinned. He has engaged in bad behaviors. But you remember the father's response, right? But the father said, "Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again, and is lost and is now found." So they began to celebrate. Why? Because the only thing the father could think about was bringing that kid back into the family. Because see, sin to the father is not necessarily a bad behavior as much as it is being separated from the Father. See, faith is not about believing or just behaving. It's about being in relationship with the Father. And that makes all the difference. That's what I put in my box. That's of greater value than anything else in life, is a relationship with my Father. A couple of years ago, I lost everything on my computer. It just crashed. And so in trying to repiece from external hard drives and so on, put it back together again, I happened upon this file that I totally forgot about. It was a file that was titled Dad's Rules for the Dog. And it was several pages, single space, dating back to when we moved from Washington State to the state of Ohio. I promised my kids that if we moved, I would let them get a dog. I was always Mr. Bah Humbug when it came to pets. I didn't want pets. But to bribe them, I said, fine. But understand, it's going to be your dog. So I wrote this out. I don't remember writing it out, but I know I did. It spelled out all of Dad's rules for the dog. It stated things like Dad is never going to pet the dog. He is never going to feed the dog. Heaven forbid, he is never going to clean up after the dog. He is not going to exercise the dog. He's not going to pay for any of the dog's food. That is all on you girls. If you want a dog, it's your dog. Dad wants nothing to do with a dog. So I was on a trip to Australia. When I landed at LAX, I got a text and a picture that my girls had gone out with Mom and they got a dog. All right, well, that was not a surprise. I knew that was coming. But what I was not prepared for was how much I immediately liked that dog. I took this video of the dog. This was now 10 years ago. And they named him Skipper, which is not the name I wanted. I wanted to name him Repent, so that I could walk through my neighborhood and call, come, repent, come, repent. I figured that way I could, now is that not just a great dog? And lo and behold, I became that obnoxious pet owner that posts videos like this on my Facebook page. It's just pitiful, isn't it? And even though I said very clearly that Dad is not going to pay anything for this dog, a couple of years ago, Skipper just stopped eating. And there you go, that's my dog. But he stopped eating, and we didn't know why. And he lost like 8 pounds, and he only weighs 12 or 30. I mean, it's just, and he wouldn't drink, he wouldn't eat. And I remember I was at a wedding. I was officiating at a wedding, and my wife normally would have come with me to the wedding, but instead she was taking Skipper to the ER, and I remember texting her saying, I don't care what it costs to have surgery. It doesn't matter, just keep that dog alive, keep that. And Skipper turns out to be a perfect running partner. He'll go 5-6 miles with me right at my pace, and whenever I come home, if I've been chewed out by the board or somebody has said something critical about my sermon, I come home and guess what? Skipper loves me, doesn't matter. Even if I haven't treated him well, he loves me, and I love that dog. And now he's getting old, and I'm so sad about that because I know the day is coming when he won't, live forever. But tell me, how does a person go from, I am not spending 1 cent on that dog, to, I don't care what it costs, just please keep the dog alive. Now, I know all illustrations sort of break down at certain points, but it seems to me like clearly it's all about a relationship, isn't it? When I wrote the rules for the dog, it wasn't for Skipper, because I didn't know Skipper. It was just for some dog. And see, that makes all the difference when it comes to living by the rules, if you will. When it's in the context of a relationship. One last story, then we're done. My daughter, when she was born, my oldest daughter, I just could not get enough of this kid. I would just stare at her in the little crib. She was just such a perfect child. And after several days, my wife suggested, why don't you maybe get out of the crib and go back to work? So I said, very well, under one condition, that you let me take Lindsay with me. And she said, okay, fine. So I took Lindsay with me across the street to the church office, and I set her on the desk, turned around to make a phone call. This was before everybody had a cell phone. We actually had phones in the office. And, so I turned around, and when I looked back on the desk, Lindsay had been raptured. She was gone. And I don't really believe in the rapture theology like that. So that's a problem. Lo and behold, she had fallen from a desk all the way down to a cement floor with a very, very thin piece of carpet glued to it. And there was just that brief second where I wondered, maybe she didn't notice that she had just fallen about 3.5 feet. But then she was just sucking up all of the air in the county so that she could express her displeasure, and she let out this blood-curdling shriek and scream. I panicked. Didn't know what to do. I called a friend of mine who is a pediatrician, and he assured me that kids are pretty resilient. It's probably going to be okay to look for certain signs, like if there's blood coming out of the ears or something like that, which he said, no, she's probably going to be fine, don't panic. And I said, oh, okay. I didn't really want to call my wife. I thought, I'd wait for her to hear this story in a sermon where I was safe, right? But here's my question. What would you think if I told you that the next thing that I did was to give her a good old-fashioned spanking for disobeying my rule? I can't even imagine a dad so demonic. It never crossed my mind to reprimand her, to say, I told you to stay on the desk. I told you not to fall. And yet, how many people have this twisted picture of God? Like he's some evil father who's just waiting for us to fall, and when we do, he's got the electric chair plugged in, ready to punish us. That's not the heart of a father at all. The only thing I could think about, scooping that little kid up and just holding her close, until her heart found healing in my embrace. That's the heart of our Father. And that's what I deem more important than anything else in the world. That's what I put in my box. Faith. Not just behaving or believing a certain way. Just being with my Father, who loves me unconditionally, even when I fall. Father, we're grateful for your grace. We're thankful for your love. We're thankful, God, that you have entrusted to us the awesome responsibility of sharing that grace. So God, I pray an anointing of your Holy Spirit upon every one of us, that we would preach grace boldly, that we would speak the word of God with conviction, with authenticity, with the power of your Spirit in us. So God, bless us as we seek to be faithful in preaching your word and